Hi, my name is Miss Weissman and I'm a music teacher at Cool Spring Elementary School, and I'm here today with Mr. Daryl Davis. He has agreed to answer some of my students' questions. Mr. Davis has played with Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, and B.B. King, right?
That is right. Thank you for having me.
When did you start playing the piano?
Actually, I was a late bloomer. I've always enjoyed music, but up until the age of 17, I wanted to be either a spy, an espionage agent like James Bond, or a computer programmer. And there was no way I could be both. So I started playing music at the age of 17. I had not played prior to that.
Where did you learn to play like that?
Initially, I learned by ear. I had friends who were in concert band, jazz band, marching band at school, and little rock and roll bands outside of school. But since I couldn't join in any of those activities because I didn't know how to read music or play, they would show me little things, and I would go home and really, really practice them at the age of 17. And then I decided to major in music. And so, of course, I had to go out and buy books and teach myself how to read. And I had a lot of bad habits of being self-taught, the wrong fingering, the wrong hand position, and things like that. But I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C., where I got my formal training, and I had all those things corrected and graduated with my degree in music.
Is it difficult to play like that?
Well, initially it's difficult to play like anything, but practice makes perfect. And I practiced playing like that. In that particular style of music, your left hand is speaking a whole different language and it's playing a whole different rhythm. And your right hand is playing something counter to your left hand. So they're not even, coordinated necessarily. There are two different things going on. So when you think about it in theory, it may sound almost impossible, but it can be done. And, and it's best to learn when you're young, because that way you're sponging all this information and you haven't reached a point, in adolescence where you think, that can't be done.
So coordinating your left and your right hand, doing different things at the same time,
Right.
that takes a lot of practice.
It does take a lot of practice. And, it's like walking and chewing gum at the same time, or rubbing your stomach and patting your head. It takes a little bit of practice. But again, if you do it on a daily basis, like most kids, they text or type on the computer keyboard. When they first started, they had to look at the keys and coordinate that kind of thing. But now, you can be reciting something and they can be typing as fast as you're talking after practice.
Do you sometimes mess up when you're playing in front of other people?
Oh, sure. The air is human. And I make my share of mistakes. But there's also a way to cover those mistakes. If you hit the wrong note, hit it again and again and again. And that way people get the idea, oh, that was intentional.
Who taught you to play piano?
Initially, I was self-taught. I taught myself how to play by listening to records of people that I really liked, other piano players. And then I got lessons from two of the world's greatest blues and boogie woogie piano players. They both were legendary. The late, great Pinetop Perkins and the late, great Johnny Johnson. They both had become very good friends of mine. I admired their work, and whenever they were in town performing with Muddy Waters or somebody else, they would stay at my house. And of course, we'd end up at the piano. I'm like, hey, show me that. How you do that? And that's how I got it initially. And then, of course, my teachers at Howard University.
How many hours do you practice each day, and do you practice every day?
I try to practice every day, but my schedule is so busy these days, either performing or giving lectures. My practice time has been cut tremendously, even to a point where some days I don't get a chance to practice. But initially, when I was in school and learning, I'd play maybe 6 hours a day, after classes and things like that. And then after I graduated, sometimes 2 or 3 hours a day. These days, perhaps an hour and a half, if I can get in 30 minutes here and there. And when I travel, if I'm staying at a hotel, I'm on tour or something like that, hopefully the hotel has a ballroom with a piano like this or something. I can go in there when it's not being used and get my fingers going.
Can you play other music on the piano?
Yes, absolutely. And it's very good to learn different styles of music. And Boogie Woogie can also be adapted to different styles of music. But yes, I have my degree in music, so I had to play other forms of music, classical music and different things. And commercially, I make a living as a musician. I've had to play R&B, country, rock and roll, different genres.
Can you play other instruments?
Well, when you major in music, you have to take a semester of all the families of instruments. You take a semester of woodwinds, brass winds, strings, percussion, etc. So I played all of them at one time, not proficiently, but just to play scales and things like that. But out here today, when I'm performing, piano is my main instrument, voice, of course, and I play a little bit of guitar.
Why do you close your eyes when you're playing, and how do you play without looking?
Many times I may not be aware that my eyes are closed, but I'm hearing the music that I'm playing. I'm feeling it. And, things are coming into my head, and believe it or not, when my eyes are closed, I'm focusing. And if I don't see distractions in the audience or lights or, other things going on, I'm able to focus a lot better. As far as how can I play with my eyes closed, I know where the keys are. They don't move. They're stationary. So I've been playing long enough that my hands will go to the right notes on the piano. Some of it is muscle memory, and also in my mind, there's a keyboard there. So I know where those notes are there, and they transfer here.
Do you enjoy playing the piano?
I do enjoy playing the piano. It's very relaxing, and I enjoy anything that makes other people happy. And that's initially why I got into music. I wanted to make people happy. So I thought about people that I really admired. And despite the fact that I did not play music or sing at the time, two names came to mind almost instantly. One was Elvis Presley, and the other one was Chuck Berry. And what I admired about these two guys was the fact that they had made millions upon millions of people all over the world happy with their music, people that they would never meet, but they would touch those people through their records, through their concerts, through their TV appearances or whatever. I said, you know what? That's really cool. I'd like to be able to make people happy that I don't even know. I'm gonna become a musician. Of course, my parents thought I was crazy, but that's the way it was.
Do your fingers hurt when you play, or how do you build up your fingers to play like that?
Sometimes, not so much the fingers, but the wrists, can get tired. And I have calluses on my fingers from playing for so long. But I will say this, very, very important, that you take good care of your health and your position when you play, whether it's guitar, we have to curl your hand around the neck, or piano, you make sure that you're sitting at the right height for the piano and you have the proper hand position.
How many years did it take to play like that?
In my opinion, I'm still learning because, I see other people play, I say, wow, I need to learn how to do that. So I'm still learning.
How do you play the keys right and not mess up?
Well, it's like, when you play football or basketball, you get that experience of throwing the ball, catching it, or baseball, hitting the ball with the stick, putting it through the hoop. And the more you do it, the better you become. And it's the same thing with the piano. Now, the difference is the piano may be a little bit easier because it's always going to be the same situation with the piano. Every time you go on a football field or a baseball field or a basketball court, it's always going to be different because players are moving in different directions. But these keys are never moving. They're always right here.
Do you get tired playing so fast?
No, I don't really get tired from playing so fast because it builds up kind of an energy, kind of an adrenaline. And I'm sure if I had to do it for hours at a time, that might wear me out a little bit. But as you're playing it, that energy is there, and it's like reinvigorating you.
What country does this music come from?
This music, known as Boogie Woogie, comes from our own country, the USA. mostly the southern part of the USA, down around Texas. And there was a lot of it also in the logging camps in Florida, way back in the day.
How old is this music?
Well, the first Boogie Woogie ever recorded was 1927.
Where did Boogie Woogie come from?
What characterizes Boogie Woogie is what's called in classical music a basso ostinato, which in classical terms means a repeating bass line. So while you have many piano players who, for example, their left hand, they play chords in their left hand and play a melody in their right hand. So you might have something like this. I'm chording in my left hand and playing the melody in my right hand, because you might have a bass player who's playing the bass, so you don't have to play bass. But a Boogie Woogie player encompasses the whole band. He can play chords in his left hand, he can play the bass in his left hand, he can play the melody in the right hand, solo in the right hand, and even chord in the right hand. So take that same melody. I say, so I'm playing the line of the bass line in my left hand. So that's what characterizes Boogie Woogie, a basso ostinato. And that basso ostinato repeats throughout the entire song. And there are many different kinds of basso ostinatos. You might have what's called a walking bass. I'll play the whole 12 bar for you. That runs through the song, or okay, and there are many, many different ones. Backwards. Let's see. Many, many different ones, and you can make up your own. And that pattern will run through the song.
So you're playing the same pattern through every chord that changes.
Right, exactly.
How long did it take to create Boogie Woogie?
I don't know how long it took to create it. I would imagine within a very short time, because the people who created it never had formal music lessons. They just played what they felt. And people do that all the time. And then if it catches on, other people began doing it. Now, Boogie Woogie evolved from 1927 on into the 1940s. It became very, very popular. And then it became rock and roll in the 1950s. But something interesting happened. Well, first of all, let's go back to the original Boogie Woogie. The first Boogie Woogie recorded was called Pinetop's Boogie Woogie by a fellow named Clarence Pinetop Smith. Now, why this name Pinetop? A lot of blues type artists and Boogie Woogie type artists, they all had nicknames. Like in the blues, you had somebody like named Muddy Waters, Howling Wolf, B.B. King. These were not their real names. Muddy Waters, his real name was McKinley Morganfield. Howling Wolf, his real name was Chester Burnett. B.B. King, his real name was Riley King. He got the name B.B. because nobody knew what his name was, and he was standing on the street corner playing guitar for quarters, so they called him Blues Boy, B.B. And they knew his last name was King. So Pinetop Smith, he combed his hair straight up into what looked like a pine tree, a pine cone, so they called him Pinetop. Pinetop Perkins took over the nickname of his mentor, and he named himself Pinetop Perkins, and that's who I learned from. And one of the beauties of Boogie Woogie, unlike classical music, is that it lends itself to artist interpretation. You can take artistic liberty with it and make it your own. So everybody who plays Pinetop's Boogie Woogie has their own adaptation of it, which is perfectly fine, as long as you give credit to where the original, came from. So Pinetop Perkins learned it from Pinetop Smith, and he plays a little bit differently. I learned it from Pinetop Perkins, and I play it a little differently. And there are many, many different versions of it. But again, we all borrow from one another, but we give credit back to where it originated. Now, that was 1927. Before Pinetop died in 1927, I believe it was, well, that's when he recorded it, but he died shortly thereafter. By the time he died, he had left us about a half a dozen recordings. He knew a lot more songs, but he paid as he went. He didn't always have money. So by the time he died, he had recorded 6 tunes. And we're very fortunate to have those. And one of those was called Pinetop's Boogie Woogie. Now, in 1929, in this country, there was the Great Depression. Stock market fell. Nobody had any money. And what black people did was they had what were called house rent parties. Now, what does that mean? They would have a party, and they would charge anybody coming to the party like maybe 50 cents to come. And at a party, 2 very important things must be present in order to make the party successful: good food and good music. Now, back in the 1920s, bands were humongous. They took up a whole stage. Well, you could no longer afford a band in 1929 because of the Depression. Nobody had any money, people lost their jobs. So what you did was you hired one man who could take the whole place of a band, play the bass, the melody, the chording. That would be a Boogie Woogie piano player. So Boogie Woogie became very, very popular in black house rent parties. And then once the Depression was over, a lot of big bands like Glenn Miller, Count Basie, Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman began adapting many of their tunes, which were known as swing, into Boogie Woogie style, kind of as a novelty. And it caught on, and it lasted through the 30s and the 1940s when somebody came along in the 1950s and adapted it and put a backbeat behind it and called it rock and roll.
Can you play a little bit of Pinetop's Boogie?
Sure, I'll go ahead and play Pinetop's Boogie Woogie for you. Okay, so that was a little sample of a little bit of Pinetop's Boogie Woogie. Now, I was asked earlier, how did I learn how to play? And I told you I was self-taught and then later formally trained. When I first started playing piano, because I didn't have any guidance or instruction, I didn't know the proper fingering or anything like that. For the life of me, I still don't know why. But when I first began playing, I played with these 2 fingers on this hand tucked in, and these 2 on this hand tucked in. So I only played with 6 fingers. I never used these two fingers on either hand. In fact, I didn't even know why they were there. But everything that I just played, I could do with these fingers. And so I'll just give you a little example of that. Okay, so it never occurred to me to use these other fingers. Now, of course, when I went to school and learned formally, they had me doing the scales. So all my fingers began to operate. So I can play with all 10 fingers. But sometimes, you know, when my eyes are closed or whatever, and I'm playing, I'm not thinking, I'm just focusing on what I'm hearing in my head, inadvertently, I'll revert back to my old habits, and these fingers will curl in, and I'll be playing with 6 fingers.
When Boogie Woogie changed to rock and roll, did the piano part change also?
The piano style, it changed a little bit. Initially, it was the same, okay? Now, it didn't go right from Boogie Woogie right into rock and roll. You know, Boogie Woogie, you know, went through a couple other phases. It went through the swing era, and then it became jump blues, and then rock and roll. But, you know, Chuck Berry is the man who invented rock and roll. He's the one who put that backbeat to it. And before he did that, there was none. So when you listen to his records, he was the youngest in the group of musicians who were playing with him. So these older guys, you know, since there was no precedent for rock and roll, they were playing swing. And Chuck was rocking on the guitar. So, for example, if you take this pattern right here, which is like a blues shuffle, these 2 notes, that's called a shuffle. And if I were to write it out musically on a staff, it would be a dotted eighth followed by a 16th. Long, short, long, short, long, short, okay? If I were to make them even, all eighth notes, here's a shuffle, long, short, long, short. Now I'll make them even. And I can roll them. Right? Now, if I were to combine the shuffle with the straight, you would get this. That's rock. Okay? So that's what he did. He was rocking like this on the guitar while the band was swinging. He had that kind of push-pull thing. So of course now everybody rocks. But you know, when you didn't know how to do it, and you came from a swing background, it was new.
The songs you play, are they originals?
Well, the songs I play in general, I do some original songs, and I also do some cover songs. And I will generally do, unless I'm asked to do a song note for note because of a tribute to somebody, something like that, I will do my own interpretation of that song.
Do the songs have words?
Yes, many of the songs I play do have words to them, but I also do a fair share of instrumentals.
Why do you repeatedly hit a key over and over again?
Sometimes I hit the same key over and over again for emphasis, like a... Other times I might hit it because I hit the wrong note. And if I just let it stand out there by itself, everybody's going to know, oh, he hit a wrong note. But if I do it again and again, then it sounds like it might be right. So for example, let's say I say, now it sounds right.
How do you keep the rhythm?
My left hand is the rhythm section. Rhythm section consists of bass and drums, and I got all this right here in my hand. A piano belongs to the percussion family. Many people think that it belongs to the string family because it has strings in it. However, it is a percussion instrument because when you push down on a note on the piano, a hammer comes and strikes the string percussively. So essentially, I'm playing the drum in my left hand. I'm playing the bass. So there is the rhythm right there. And my left hand keeps time against my right hand. Now, watch or listen to this. I'm going to play my left hand. I'm going to play a rhythm pattern in there, and it's going to stay the same. I'm going to play in my right hand, I'm going to match it. Long, short, long, short, long, short. And then I'm going to play triplets. I'm going to play 3 times as fast, well, I'll play 3 times as fast as I'm playing in my left hand. My right hand's going to move, but my left hand will be steady. And then I'll do quadruplets. Okay, so here we have the shuffle. I'm going to match it. Triplets. Okay, so my left hand has to be the anchor. That's my drummer, that's my timekeeper, my metronome.
What is your favorite song to play on the piano?
The one that people pay me the most to play.
What made you decide that piano playing was your passion?
Well, we always had a piano in the house, even though I couldn't play it. My mom played a little bit. My dad played a little bit. He also played a little bit of saxophone, but this was all before I was born. And, you know, when I saw Chuck Berry and Elvis and said, you know, that's what I want to do. My dream later became, you know, I want to play with Chuck Berry. And he became my hero. And Chuck played guitar. So it was no point in me playing guitar if I'm going to play with him. He's a guitar player. But my mind thinks like this. Well, if I can do what I hear that piano player on his record doing, maybe he'll give me a chance to play with him. So that piano player was a guy named Johnny Johnson. So I found Johnny Johnson, and I learned to play from him, learned to play like him, and, you know, in that style. And then sure enough, I got the opportunity to play with Chuck one day. And he liked what I did, and he began calling me to play with him. And that relationship lasted for 32 years until he died. I didn't play every gig with him, but I did a number of them.
It must have been exciting to play with somebody who you idolized.
Yes, absolutely. Chuck was my mentor, my hero, my boss, my teacher, and he was my friend. And I learned so much from that man, so much from that man. It was just amazing, and I still apply the principles, you know, that I learned from him today, which has enabled me to be able to make a living playing music.
How many songs can you play from memory?
I would say over 1,000.
Are you famous?
I don't know. It depends upon who you ask. If they know me, I guess. If they don't know me, I guess not.
Are you a music teacher?
Yes, I have taught music privately, and, you know, in my home, piano lessons, but I also teach by giving lectures on music. So in that sense, yes, I am a music teacher.
Do you like other kinds of music? Or what kinds of music do you like?
I love all kinds of music, and I'm influenced by many different genres, but I do have my passions.
Which are?
I like early roots rock, which would include boogie woogie, blues, country, rockabilly, doo-wop, jazz.
You mentioned that swing bands adapted songs to Boogie Woogie. Can you show us what you mean?
Sure. You know, you might take a popular song, such as, let's say, Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, okay? And then play it boogie woogie style. Let's say, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, Miss Wiseman, happy birthday to you.
You've talked about Boogie Woogie in the 1940s, 1950s, and the 60s. Is it still around today?
Yes, in many different instances, you can find boogie woogie bass lines permeating a lot of today's music. Um, let's go back to the 1940s, for example. Big bands. One of the most popular songs in big band. I mean, there were many ones, but one of the most popular was a song called "In the Mood" by the Glenn Miller Orchestra, and it was adapted to boogie woogie style at some point. So it went something like this. Okay, 1940s. Even in the 1960s, one of my very favorite composers was a guy who passed away a few years ago, great American composer. This guy could compose in any genre of music. He was not a jack of all trades. He was a master of all trades and one of the greatest American composers. His name was Henry Mancini. And a lot of kids, many of your students probably would know his music from watching cartoons on Saturday morning. One of the most popular ones were the Pink Panther cartoon series. Also TV shows like Peter Gunn. He wrote that music. Days of Wine and Roses. But he also did a boogie woogie. He wasn't known as a boogie woogie player, but he did a boogie woogie. And this is the boogie woogie he did for a movie called Hatari. It's called Baby Elephant Walk. Okay, 1960s. The Pointer Sisters did a song back in the 70s called the Neutron Dance. And that had this line. That's being played straight instead of it's boogie woogie. Bruce Springsteen in the 80s had a song, had a bossa astronaut boogie woogie called Pink Cadillac. So yes, we do hear it. I've heard it in some of Madonna's songs. So yes, it's still around. You see elements of it.
I want to thank Mr. Davis for coming here today to answer my students' questions.
Thank you very much, and I hope one day that some of these students will one day be playing the piano and I'll have a chance to jam with them.
Thank you.
I'm so glad I'm living in the USA. Anything you want, they got it right here in the USA. Easy now. Now, you know, I've noticed one thing about you folks. What I've noticed is, whenever you all hear this kind of music that Josh and John and I are playing right now, whenever you all hear this kind of music that we're playing being played by the late, great Elvis Presley, or Jerry Lee Lewis, or Carl Perkins, you all call it rockabilly. But we hear the same thing being played by the late, great Chuck Berry, or Little Richard, or Fats Domino, or Bo Diddley, you all call it rock and roll. But I tell you what, old Chuck Berry told me it's nothing but boogie woogie with a backbeat. Now why do they call it boogie woogie? Easy now, I'm gonna tell you. Give me a little light rhythm there. 5-4-1. Now, you play boogie woogie, people. The left hand on the piano, the left hand has the boogie. Check it out. Break. That's called boogie. And the right hand got the woogie. Check it out. When you put them both together, what you got? Now, you know, there are many, many different kinds of boogie, and we know them all between us, but we don't have all night long. I'll just do a few of them for you. Old Jerry Lee Lewis, he comes from a place called Faraday, Louisiana. He plays what's called the Jerry Lee Boogie. Jerry Lee plays his boogie like this. Now, Little Richard, he's from down in Macon, Georgia. He plays his boogie like this. Old Fats Domino, he's from down in New Orleans. He boogies like this. The late, great Ray Charles, he boogied like this. Walking the boogie. Called swinging the boogie. Walking. Swing it. Walk it. Swing it. Called the backwards boogie. Now Daryl Davis, he boogies like this. Oh, give me a little rhythm there, son. Just a little bit of rhythm. Now, you know, people ask me while I was sitting over here on my break, were you self-taught or were you formally trained? The answer is yes to both those questions. Got my degree in music from Howard University, but I learned to play piano from the late, great Pinetop Perkins and Chuck Berry's original piano player, the late, great Johnny Johnson. They told me, you gotta feel it. People say to me, Daryl, when you play piano, how come you don't look at the keys? I feel it. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Keep it going right there. me that shuffle. Yeah, I'm so glad I'm living in the USA. Well, I'm so glad I'm living in the USA. Anything you want, they got it right here in the USA. One more time. Yeah, I'm so glad I'm living in the USA.
Whoa, yeah.
I'm so glad I'm living in the USA.
Oh, yeah.
Anything you want, they got it right here in the USA.
Daryl Davis.
Thank you.